Sudanile Christian Democratic Party, SCDP, by Chairman Manyang Perek Von Chip Perek. Why not relinquish power peacefully? Healthy politics in civilized modern world can only be decided through democracy by using ballots, not by bullets. In principle, politics is not about shooting bullets. It has to do with offers good political ideas to the people based on clear vision and ideology. But this was not the case when the SPLA started a liberation movement. Some of its leaders planted poisons in our citizens in order to control power and wealth, just for personal fame in governance. That venom remains up to today in our people's heart and mind. It has led to the current conflict. It has killed and destroyed our properties. Therefore, the control of power during the liberation movement by the past leaders is still persisting up to today in a form of dictatorship. It has manifested into a first-order tyranny. Right from the start, it was wrong for the SPLM leadership to use political tricks and force in ascending to power. Without any doubt, the use of excessive force has eventually ended in disaster to our people. One-man rule is unacceptable practice, which should have not happened. The SPLM should have not committed its leader to pursue bad rule. It is now eating up the current leadership in so many aspects. For a leader to assume power through political emotion and political intrigues in order to own people's revolution against successive Islamic Arab regime of the Sudan was in fact very misleading. This is why it has affected the current leadership of SPLM to a point of being destructive to itself. The SPLM has become like a broken glass. It will never unite again. Its current leaders are responsible for the party mess. As popular party, the SPLM has to desist from bad practice and learn from the political history of dictators like Idi Amin Dada, who had wanted to stay in power for life. What happened to him? He was shamelessly kicked out. The SPLM aging leaders have to learn that they will not stay youthful forever. Becoming old does create problem of physical weakness and inability to govern properly. This can create power vacuum when there are lack of qualified cadres to fill in the vacant positions in the leadership of the party. So the SPLM should not stick on power without working in transforming the movement into true party. Hanging to power by abusing government resources is negative, as the nation does belong to all the people. They should transform SPLM into two parties or three on clear ideology instead of creating more political problems in the country. Adam Smith knew that throughout history, a strong political grasps power when given the opportunity. But George Washington was against use of army to gain power. He believed in the rule of law. Applying his wisdom, he stepped aside from power because he does believe that a peaceful transition of power to a newly elected president was necessary before his death. His fear was that if he died in office and vice president ascended to the presidency, it would appear too much like an heir ascending to the throne after the death of a king. In this view, George III says that Washington's retirement from the presidency along with the earlier resignation of Commander-in-Chief, place him in a light of the most distinguished of any man living, and that is relinquishing character of the age. This was well remarked by Ronald Reagan when he won the election, that, my fellow citizen, to a few of us today, this is a solemn and most momentous occasion, and yet in the history of our nation, it is a commonplace occurrence. The orderly transfer of authority as called for in the Constitution routinely takes place as it has for almost 2 centuries, and few of us stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of 4-year ceremony, we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. In this regard, the surrender of this generalship, Washington completed his transformation from man to symbol. By peacefully surrendering power, he had turned himself into a historical architect. He was playing the role of the Republican general. Washington relinquished power means that his job was done. To his peers, the classical references was unthinkable, that he would risk his life and forsake personal gain in their service. In conclusion, once people respond with slow faith for necessary changes that are intended from the top leadership, does envelop people who are highly locally oriented into a national consciousness. Top leadership also need to shun political greed and desire to stick to political power. In this case, there has to emerge a class of political leaders. A nation needs to run well functional political democratic parties to contest elections periodically every few years and be ready to relinquish political power to an elected political party leader. Essentially, democratic governance basically reflects a desire among political leaders of the nation to share political power based on free and fair elections. Independent judiciary and fairly neutral civil service automatically involved when political leaders are ready to provide leadership for a few years and relinquish the same merely to an elected successor. Okay. However, there is a lot of fear that does accompany dictatorship at the political level of losing political patronage and becomes a victim of political misunderstanding. This includes fear of the press to write truth if it means criticizing the regime, with the fear of common citizens to be misunderstood by dictatorial regime. All of these start and sustain on the backs of a fear among top political leaders to be in power perpetually for decades. Added to this are people in the area of economy from good universities who does import education, and they are scientists and engineers dedicated to research. This would not matter little to improve quality of life of the nation if the democratic governance that can spur inclusiveness movement is not in place. Indeed, what is strange is that though how despite all the economic and technological developments, those modern times have witnessed the attitude of divisiveness and exclusions continuing to reign in one form or the other. Sometimes we see it in overt forms, and at other times it rears its head in covert forms. Thus, management approach of institutions and organizations characterized exclusion for a very long time, but we do hope that a younger generation of political leaders has to emerge out of this crisis to be able to bring peace back to our Christian newborn country. In many countries, it is possible to remain in power for the rest of your life. Political leaders try to secure their legacy by choosing their successor. Indonesia is a textbook example. It is normal for politicians who thus refuse to leave the political arena and opted for interfering with government affairs, which is a method of meddling by former politicians, which has become a worldwide phenomenon for people to reckon with today. The hard fact is that SPLM has poisoned our society with the fact that our national army, which is for the defense of the nation, has allowed itself to be used by individual leaders who have an ambition of controlling power and wealth of the nation. This time, military people should not be engaged in politics if we are interested in peace and progress.